Hey KidStep friends, welcome back. We are in week 2 of our series called Renew. This series, we are diving into the book of Psalms, which is a pretty big book of the Bible, but we're looking at it through the eyes of how do we get our soul and our hearts to be refreshed, renewed by Jesus, right? And so last week we looked at Psalms 1 and 2, and we looked at how when we are meditating on God's word, that renews us. And meditating on God's word just means diving into it, spending a lot of time in it, reading it over and over and soaking in it, right? Because we want to spend time with Jesus, and we know that one of the ways that we can spend time with Jesus is by reading his word and learning more about him through it. So we talked about meditating on God's word and the challenge of being in God's word more and more and more, so that we become more and more like Jesus. This week, we are in Psalm chapter 23, and this is a pretty familiar psalm. You might have heard it, you might have heard pieces of it before, but what I thought we would do together is I brought my Jesus Storybook Bible with me, and I thought we would read a chapter in it. And this chapter kind of gives us a good overview of the book of Psalms, because we know that a lot of the Psalms were written by David. And you might know him as David from David and Goliath, or you might know him as King David. But David wrote a lot of the Psalms, and they're just kind of songs and prayers. It's kind of like his personal prayer journal to God, but written for all of us to read and to learn from. And so it gives us a good overview of David, but it also gives us an awesome overview of Psalm 23. So if you have your Jesus Storybook Bible, open it up with me to page 130. It's called The Good Shepherd, and we're going to read it together. So David was a shepherd, but when God looked at him, he saw a king. And sure enough, when David grew up, that's just what he became. And David was a great king. He had a heart like God's heart, full of love. Now, that didn't mean he was perfect, because he did some terrible things. He even murdered a man. Can you imagine? King David. And it wasn't Goliath. It was another man. No, David made a big mess of his life, but God can take even the biggest mess and make it work in his plan. I need a new heart, Lord, David prayed, because mine is full of sin. Make me clean inside. God heard David's prayer. He forgave David, and he made David a promise. I will make you great, David, and one day a king will be born into your family, and he will heal the whole world. Did you know that David was a songwriter too? In fact, his songs were so good, they might have been in the top 40 charts, if that had been invented then. David's songs are like prayers. They are called psalms, and this one is called the Song of the Shepherd. It's probably number 1 on the Psalms chart, and it goes something like this. God is my shepherd, and I am his little lamb. He feeds me, he guides me, he looks after me. I have everything I need. Inside, my heart is very quiet as lying still in soft green grass in a meadow by a little stream. Even when I walk through the dark, scary, lonely places, I won't be afraid, because my shepherd knows where I am. He is here with me. He keeps me safe. He rescues me. He makes me strong and brave. He is getting wonderful things ready for me, especially for me. Everything I ever dreamed of. He fills my heart so full of happiness, I can't hold it all inside. Wherever I go, I know God's never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love will go to. God gave David that song to sing to his people so that they could know that he loved them and would always look after him, like a shepherd loves his sheep. And one day, God was going to do something that would inspire thousands upon thousands of new songs. God was going to show his people once and for all just how much he loved them. Another shepherd was coming, a greater shepherd. He would be called the Good Shepherd, and this shepherd was going to lead all of God's lambs back to the place where they always belonged, close to God's heart. I just love that because I think it reminds us how good God is, how much he loves us. And I think when we're reading Psalm 23, we see that too. We see that no matter where we go, God is always with us, keeping us safe, helping us be brave. He's our good shepherd. So friends, as you head into this week, may you remember that God is our good shepherd. I will see you next Sunday for another video as we continue through the book of Psalm together.